All right, what's going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to sell anything to anyone. And after doing over 7 million sales, I've created a simple 4-step framework that anyone can use to start closing more deals. Let's dive into it. First thing we're going to do is we need to set the intro, okay? The intro is the frame and then setting a leadership-based report. The goal of this section is to clearly establish a frame, which means outlining a plan of how the conversations are going to go, while also, and this is more important, establishing yourself as the leader of that conversation. Okay? Now let me be clear. This is where most people fuck up. Okay? What an average salesperson will do is they will try and build what is called friendly rapport, right? Basically, they try and get the other person to like them. Okay. And this is due to outdated sales tactics where people think that in order for someone to buy from them, they need to like, know, and trust you. Now, the last two are true, right? The first is incorrect. People don't need to like you to buy from you. They need to respect you. And there's a big difference. Okay. This is the type of frame that you want to set. It's called the doctor frame, right? When you go see a doctor, you can tell that they own the room, right? They're sharp, they're with it, they ask questions to understand your situation, and then they prescribe you a solution. And you'll do whatever they tell you. If you go into the doctor's office and they're like, drop your pants, you drop your pants, right? That's the type of frame that you need to create, okay? Here's how you create frame. Now, I'm gonna go from the lowest level of doing it to the more advanced level. The lowest way of doing this on a sales call is to say something like this. I'm gonna ask you some questions to better understand your situation, and then if everything makes sense at the end of the call, I'm gonna explain what we do, and if that's something that you wanna do, we will proceed with enrollment, right? If you suck at sales and you're a total noob, you can start there, but to be honest, this sucks. Like, it's just a terrible way to set a frame, okay? Because what this creates is sales pressure, right? As the entire call is basically leading up to you closing them and pitching them. And no one wants to feel that level of pressure, right? Now, the reason that beginners do this is because they don't have an internal frame. They don't come off strong and convicted just with their energy naturally. And so they have to do this because if they don't do this, their call is going to flail all over the place and the prospect is just going to berate them with questions. So as soon as you can, once you develop that internal energy and that confidence, you need to shift away from using that type of frame, okay? The highest level of frame, it does not come from the words you say. It comes from the energy that you bring. Now, where I'm at right now, I don't need to set a strong frame. I don't get on and say, oh, this is how the call is going to go. I can simply just start a call by saying, hey, I know we've got a limited amount of time. It's cool if we jump right in. You got a clean sheet of paper or something you can take notes with? All right, awesome. And then I go to my first question. Right? Now, to create this level of frame, it comes from everything that you're doing off the calls. 90% of your success in sales will have nothing to do with what you do on the sales call, and it will have everything to do with what you are doing off of your sales call. Okay? You need to be living in true alignment with yourself to create a frame strong enough where you're not trying to create a frame anymore. Right? Do you see the problem with that? Oh, I'm trying to create a frame. You shouldn't have to try. You should be. But that means you have to do a lot of work off the calls. You need to be living in alignment. You need to be focusing on personal development. You need to be bettering your health. You need to be keeping the promises that you make yourself behind closed doors. Do the things that you know you need to be doing when no one else is watching, right? Pretty simple. You know what they are. I don't need to tell you that because you know for yourself. You can't break those promises yourself, okay? You need to be the type of person that your prospect respects, which first starts by respecting yourself. The simple things are this. If you're not taking care of your body, your mind, right? You're living out of alignment with your core values, your prospects will subconsciously feel that lack of alignment from you. And here's the kicker, is you could do everything right in the sales call. You could say all the right words, handle all the objections with the fancy tactics and stuff. But if they get that sense from you, they won't buy from you because they won't be able to verbalize it, but they're just going to feel like something is off. And when they feel like something is off, their resistance goes up. And that's like, I need to think about it. I don't really know. I need to sleep on it. Right? That's why the stuff that you do off the calls is so important. It's not just the training. It's everything off the calls too. Okay? So just some simple steps you can take right now. Get in shape. If you're fat, you're overweight, you look like shit, get in shape. You know, Andy Elliott, I know he screams at his employees like, hey, you got to have, a fucking six pack. You don't need to do that necessarily. But if you look like a slob, people are going to treat you like a slob. It's pretty simple. Work out every day. Run, walk, meditate, journal, right? Do things that are good for your mental health. And then beyond that, do the things that you know that you need to be doing. We all have internal promises that we have. Like, you need to keep those to yourself, okay? If you're not, you're living in alignment. Pretty simple, okay? And I want to make it very clear, what we're talking about here, this isn't some overnight fix. If you're looking for a quick sales hack, this isn't it. This takes years of work. Years. However, when you master this, this is what takes you to the next level. This is how you'll never be able to go below making $100,000 a year again because you have these internal skills to be able to do so. Okay. Now, Once you've established your frame correctly, the prospects are going to be in a position where they feel safe and comfortable opening up to you, and you'll notice that prospects more willingly give you information and are more willing to work with you, and they don't see you just as a salesperson, they see you as a leader, right? Someone who's generally trying to help them. Most calls are lost here. It's lost in the intro. You have the wrong frame, you bring the wrong energy to the call, something happened before the call, you lost the other sale, and you're like, shit, you're in a bad mood, girlfriend breaks up with you, whatever it might be. That immediate second when you start the call, that will determine the fate of your call. If you come with the wrong energy, you're fucked. You have to make sure you're coming to every single call with the right energy, okay? Now, as a side note, this is very important whenever you're trying to self-diagnose calls, or if you're a manager or a business owner and you're looking at people's calls, the beginning of a call is more important than the end, okay? So I want you to think of this like a hose. If you have a hose and water's coming out, and this is the beginning and this is the end, well, if I kink the hose at the beginning, almost nothing's gonna flow out, right? But if I kink the hose at the end, I'll still get stuff going through. So when you're looking at your sales process to fix, you might have a bunch of things that are messed up. Your intro and frame, your discovery, right? Your objection handling, a bunch of things can be messed up. The stuff in the beginning is more important though, because if the frame is off, it's going to affect the discovery. If the discovery is off, it's going to affect the pitch. If the pitch is off, it's going to affect your objection handling, meaning you're going to get more objections, right? So whenever you're looking at what to fix, always just focus on the beginning stuff first. It'll have a greater impact on the rest of your calls, okay? So that's frame, right? Frame, again, it's a much more psychological thing. It's not about the words. It's about your energy, okay? Step number 2, we go into the discovery. This is simple. We get clear on their goals, their pain, and we create a gap, okay, from where they are to where they want to be. Now, the goal of this is that we need to figure out, where does the prospect want to get to, all right? So where are they going? What are their goals, right? What is their pain? What is the current situation? And side note, pain is just the inverse of the goal. If they want something, that means they don't have it, and that's painful, right? That's the easiest way to find pain if you're struggling to do that. And then again, creating the gap, right? To really drive it home and create urgency in the prospect that they need to make a change now, that they can't keep waiting, okay? And then more importantly, when you do this correctly, to eliminate objections before the close. Most of my deals, I don't have objections on, and if I do, they're simple logistical-based objections. If you're getting a lot of, I need to think about it, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, etc., that means you need to do more work in the discovery, okay? The discovery is basically where you can stop everything that could potentially kill the deal. You should be able to sniff it out, and you just handle it right then and there, right? The way that I think about the questions that I ask when I'm in discovery, we're going to go through those here. Obviously, there's more that we go, in depth on. It really just depends on who you're talking to. Like, you need to understand who you're talking to and how to deal with prospects and how to ask high quality questions. But my questions, the way that I think of discovery is, what are all the things that would stop this person from moving forward? Let me handle that in discovery. Let me ask these questions so I can unroot that and uncover it, so that when I'm pitching at the end, I don't have to deal with a bunch of objections, right? Now, do you go goals first or you go pain first, right? There's really these two schools of thought in discovery. You could start with either the goals, right, where they want to go, or their current situation, pain, like what's not really working, right? And it depends on what you sell, okay? If you're in a B2B environment, I recommend going current situation first. It makes more sense, right? Obviously, depending on what you sell, there might be times you go goals first. Now, if it's BizOp, B2C, it makes more sense to go goals first. I have always gone goals first, and I found it to be better. Let me explain why. When you are talking to a stranger, what do you think they're more likely to start opening up about? Their goals and the things that they would like, or the pain, everything going horrible in their life? Probably the goals, right? Think about it. If you went to a bar and you meet a stranger and you start talking to them, what do? Do they start immediately being like, yeah, my wife left me and she took everything and I'm a drug addict? Maybe if you're at some weird dinky rink bar, but no, they start talking about things that they want, their job, right? Oh, I want to, yeah, it's a nice car out there, man. I want one of those, whatever it is, right? People are more likely to open up about more positive topics, and the more they'll open up to you, the more they're going to give you information that you need, and then you're going to have the things that you need to be able to close. Okay, so just go goals first if you're selling a BizOp offer, okay? Now, let's talk about the question flow, all right? And this is assuming that we're going goals first, all right? Always start with a big, broad question. Okay, the big picture goal, right? So you can literally say, big picture, what's the goal, right? What I like to do, I kind of alter that question. I'll say, cool. So like, big picture, what's the ultimate vision here, right? That word vision, it elicits a different feeling from the prospect. To say vision is not the same as goal. Vision is a more emotionally charged word. So I'm not getting them to think about their goal. I'm getting them to feel their goal. Remember, people make decisions based on emotion that they justify by logic. So the words that you use matter. They will influence whether your prospect is thinking more or feeling more, right? The reason that I start with such a broad question, like big picture, what's the goal? Or like ultimately big picture, like what's the vision here, right? Is because sometimes when you go that broad, they'll just give you everything. They'll tell you the big picture vision, kind of the more ethereal, emotional thing. They'll tell you the logical part of how much money they want to make. And sometimes they just go off on a tangent, and that's perfect, right? And then you can sit back because they're giving you everything they need, right? Not always, but sometimes, okay? Now, after that, go into the monetary goal, all right? And this is if this is a money-driven opportunity. If you're selling a dating offer or a fitness offer, ask them how much they want to make. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So maybe don't do that, right? Instead, if you're setting a dating offer, it's like, cool, how many dates do you want to be going on a week, right? Do you want to be dating multiple girls, or do you want to find one rock solid girlfriend? You can sense the difference, okay? This is important. The reason that this is important, the monetary goal, right? This is the more logical goal that we're trying to get, is it gives us an anchor, a logical anchor for the conversation to refer back to, okay? So that we have something tangible. The emotional stuff is extraordinarily important, but the way that I think of this is my guiding light through the rest of the conversation, right? That I can gear everything towards, okay? It's nice to get people to tell you how they feel, when they want to have more time, they want to be a leader for their family, they, go into all these things, they want to build generational wealth, etc. What I have found is that pairing that with something tangible, i.e. a monetary goal, assuming it's a money-driven offer, right, can make it feel more real, right? The monetary goal appeals to the logical side of the brain. The emotional goals appeal to the emotional side of the brain, and you need both in a sale, okay? And as a side note, if you are too heavy just in emotions, this is where you get a lot of buyer's remorse, because what'll happen after the sales call is like you take them through this wild emotional journey, and then they come back to their senses. You do need to take them through a journey, but you need to have enough logic built in there that when they make the decision, they feel like it's logically back, like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. This makes sense, right? So that's why I'm not trying to get someone to go off on some crazy high, right? That's what you want to do. Okay, cool. Next, we go into the time amplifier, all right? How long has that been the goal? Whenever you add the element of time to a question, it acts as an amplifier. You could say a multiplier, right? This is how I start to create the gap. Okay, I use the time amplifier for both goals and pain, right? Side note, goals could be an entry point into pain, right? So if someone told you they only wanted to do something for a week versus how they would want to do it for years, obviously, there's a more intense feeling associated with something they want to do for a longer time. And therefore, there's going to be more pain associated to that, right? Because if someone tells me they've wanted to hit 10K a month for a week versus if someone's like, hey, I want to do 10K a month for the last 3 years, well, the inverse of the goal is the pain, the fact that they can't hit 10K a month and they've been trying to for 3 years. Do you see how that's much more painful than being like, oh yeah, I just thought of hitting 10K a month and I haven't been able to do it, right? Like that wouldn't be a high quality, pain sector to dig into. I'm going to have to find another avenue of what's really going on, okay? Now, if someone is vague or they're giving you very surface level answers, you need to probe in, right? What do you mean by that? Why is that important to you? In what way though, right? If probing into something where you're really trying to get deeper with a prospect, but it seems obvious, I'll give you an example. Like let's say you're gonna ask someone, why is making 10K a month so important to you like right now, right? Sometimes that can seem obvious. Or if they're like, yeah, I wanna build generational wealth. If you probe into that and you don't pre-frame that question, they might be like, dude, that's a stupid question. Okay, so anytime you probe into something that might be kind of obvious, like if you ask someone, hey, why is making money so important to you? You are likely to get a logical answer back, which would be like, well, isn't it important for everyone? But if you pre-frame the question, which I'm about to show you how to do, you will get a higher quality answer. So the way that I do it, if I'm gonna ask basically a dumb question, is I'll be like, hey, I know this kind of might sound like a dumb question, but like, why is making more money so important to you like right now though? Okay, there's two things I did there. One is I said, I know this might sound like a dumb question. So what I do for a second is I assume an inferior position in the sales call, right? It's basically an admission of like, hey, I know this is kind of stupid, right? You ever seen that meme of Puss in Boots, from Shrek the cat when he's like looking up like this? Like that's what I'm doing for a second. No one's gonna beat up the cat, right? So I'm kind of doing the same thing. So this way they're not like, dude, that's a dumb question. Instead, they'll actually give me the answer that I want, okay? The other thing is I added time. I said right now. Not why is making more money important to you. I said, why is making more money important to you right now? Right now. That is very different because we're taking them back to the moment of decision when they said, oh my God, I got to start making more money, we're starting to get them back into that pattern, right? Because something happened in their life that made them say, I got to start making more money or whatever it is, or I got to start going on more dates. I got to lose weight. I want to take them back to that moment of decision, okay? That's goals, all right? And I really want to hit on this because I see this a lot. And years ago, I used to do this as well, is I think people spend so much time trying to build some like grandiose vision and just really like get the prospect, oh my God, it's like you do need to get them on somewhat of an emotional high, but I don't need to go that deep. Where I really like to spend the most amount of time in sales calls is in the pain, what they've tried, why it hasn't worked, and the cost of inaction. That's the real meat, right? Because that's what creates the urgency. That's what gets someone to make a decision after years of waiting. That's what really fucking matters on a sales call. Okay, not them just, oh, I hope, I've been dreaming about this forever. They already have been. Like, doesn't fucking matter. I want to know why they haven't been able to get there, what they've tried, why it's not working, and what's going to happen if they don't make a change in their life. All right, cool. So current situation, what are you currently doing for work / what have you been doing to solve this issue, right? Now, again, obviously this depends on what you're selling, right? Like if you're selling a dating offer, what they do for work, you might ask it so you can start to financially qualify in a subtle way, right? Because if you find out he works at McDonald's, maybe he doesn't have enough money. But the reason I say, what are you currently doing for work in a biz op scenario is I'm trying to figure out, one, I can financially qualify there in a very subtle way, right? Because again, I can see how much they're making based on what they're doing. But more importantly, their job is actually one of the things that could get them to where they want to go. The way that I think about it is a prospect is here, they want to get here. There's a bridge they have to cross, right? And all the different things that they've tried or thinking about are different ways that they could get there. And their job is one of those things. They're 9 to 5, or if they have another business, that is one of the ways that they could potentially get there. The goal is to get the prospect to eliminate all of them through asking them the right questions, why all those things are not going to get them to where they want to go. And then you get them to sell themselves, which we'll talk about in a second, on why your product or service is going to get them to go there. And when they eliminate every other option, it's like a test. It's like eliminate, cross out the ones that don't look right. You're only left with one. That's what drives the urgency to say, shit, what I'm currently doing isn't getting me there. Everything I've tried isn't going to get me there. The things I'm looking at are clearly not going to get me there. This one sounds going to get me there because X, Y, and Z. I guess I got to do this, right? That's how I'm thinking through the current situation, okay? So then I'll go into the solution question. And I want to make this very clear as well, especially if you're working with like 9 to 5ers, biz op style stuff. Some people spend too much time just jamming the knife in on how their 9 to 5 sucks. Okay? And it's very contextual. It depends. If you have a 9 to 5er who's been in there for years and years and years and they haven't tried any other businesses, it would make sense to quote unquote jam the knife in, right? Because they've shown you that they're willing to accept their shitty situation. So you do need to wake them up, right? You do need to jam the knife in. However, there are people, and you have to understand this about the biz ops space, who like their job. They may want to transition out of it, but they're not sitting there, oh my God, I hate my job. Usually the people that say that are fucking desperate. Okay, they're desperate and they're trying to get out. And that might be the people that are on your offer, and like, that's fine if you got to sell to them. But if you're selling to a more sophisticated, to a more well-off demographic, most of them are not going to be like, I hate my fucking job. And if you start just trying to drive the knife into how they hate their job, you're going to break a lot of fucking rapport, and they're not going to trust you. Like, dude, like, I know what you're trying to do. It comes off as extraordinarily salesy. Okay, so only do that if they're a lower level of sophistication of prospect and they have never tried anything else. If they've tried other things, instead focus more on what they've tried and why it hasn't worked for them. Okay? That's a better way to go. Cool. So, solution question. What have you looked into / tried to get to whatever their goal is, right? What have you looked into try so that you can get 10K a month? Whatever they said. This is me starting to transition to pain the current situation, right? What I'm doing is I'm weeding out any other avenues they've tried to get to where they want to go, right? So if they're looking into multiple things, and I kind of already alluded to this, you need to eliminate all the other options by asking them, what happened there? Why didn't it work, right? Why do you think this might potentially be better than XYZ thing, okay? If you do, especially in a biz op space, if you do not eliminate the other options that they're looking into, it is very likely at the end of the call, they're like, I don't know, I've got this call with this other company that does X, Y, and Z, right? Like, let's say you're selling TikTok shop, they're like, well, they do Amazon FBA. Or I've got this e-com accelerator store thing I'm going to. You know what I mean? So you have to do that in the discovery to eliminate it, so at the end, they're just focusing on your product or service, okay? Further solution question, what happened with XYZ thing? So once they start telling me the things that they've looked into, I'm like, oh, cool, yeah, so what happened, right? This is what I was just explaining, right? Now, this is kind of obvious, but if they're on the call with you, clearly what they've looked into or tried did not work well enough or did not tick off enough boxes for them to move forward on. Okay? Just think about this for a second. Even if you get someone who's like, yeah, I'm just evaluating my options, right? Like, oh, I had one call with the e-com guys. I had a call with the FBA guys. I've got a call with the Walmart store guys. If they've already taken other calls, even if they're the type of prospect who wants to, cross their T's and dot their I's and make an informed decision, what they've communicated through their behavior is that one of those things that they've looked into has not yet ticked off all their boxes, or they just would have bought it. Because everyone, if they find the right product, that they're like, hey, this is it, this is 100% right, they just buy it. So you just need to understand that about your prospects, regardless of what they're telling you, that, hey, there's something in there that didn't 100% fit. Okay? That gives you the grounds to question, hey, well, what was it specifically about that stuff over there that kind of made you say, you know what, I got to keep looking a little bit more to find that perfect fit, right? And especially if they're looking into multiple things, again, like I'm giving you a framework for the discovery. There's a lot more questions that go into this depending on what your prospect is saying, but if they're looking at multiple things, a great thing to ask is, how are you going to know when you found the right thing? And sometimes they'll say something vague, like, well, it'll be in my gut. Or sometimes they'll tell you. If they're vague, you say, okay, yeah, I totally understand that. I guess, like, what are the main characteristics of the thing that you're going to end up doing? Like, what are they going to be? Right? Because, like, gut feeling is great, but, like, obviously there's going to be a logical side that appeals to you to say, this has exactly what I need. So, like, what exactly would an opportunity need to have for you to say, this is it, I'm 100% doing it? And that's where you can start to get higher level information of specifically what they need, right? And also, whatever they're about to tell you, you use that in your pitch. Because they might tell you something like, oh yeah, well, it only takes 10 hours a week, something where I can hit 200K a month, or whatever it might be. That stuff is gold, and you need to tailor your pitch to what they're telling you, okay? All right, gap question, right? What do you feel like has ultimately held you back from getting to $10,000 a month? This is critical, especially if someone's been trying stuff for years. What do you feel has ultimately held you back from getting to? A lot of times, it'll come down to something that the prospect will self-identify with. Fear, I haven't taken action, etc., whatever it may be. And depending on their answer, especially if they say something that has to do with them, right? If they say something that has to do with, a product or service, like, I just haven't found the right one, or I tried the things but didn't really have what I was looking for, you still want to probe into it. But if it's something that's more related to them, okay, you need to handle that stuff now. You need to get them to commit that they're going to make a change, right? Because if they're like, yeah, I haven't been, really putting a lot of time and effort into it, I've just been thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, what makes now so different then? Like, who's to say you don't do this and then you don't get results because you don't put any time and effort into this? Like, after 3 years of trying different things, like, how are you gonna make sure that this time works? That this is the one? Like, you really have to get them to commit, because this is where you can seed out any identity issues, character issues that you need to work on for them to be able to buy, okay? Next, and this is a self-sell question. So basically, this is designed to get them to start to sell themselves on your product or service, okay? So after you've gone through all the other options that they've looked into and you've asked them, hey, why didn't it work, etc., which they're basically eliminating those other options themselves, right? You then get them to sell themselves on why your option would be better for them, okay? Now, I want to be very clear. You need to do this in a soft way. You need to use softeners, okay? You can't just be like, cool, so like, why do you think, let's say it's TikTok Shop. Why do you think TikTok Shop is like 100% going to be better than all those things? It's really salesy if you do that, right? You need to use softeners like, hey, well, I guess like when you think about TikTok Shop compared to, list of things, Amazon FBA and like drop shipping, why do you feel like TikTok Shop might potentially be a better opportunity to get you to 10K a month compared to all those things, right? You can see the softeners are one of my tonality. I'm like, sounding kind of confused. I'm like very soft, right? And additionally, I use the word potentially, right? Maybe, like those are softened words, okay? Cool. Now, instead of me trying to convince them on why TikTok Shop is better, they're literally going to convince me, right? They're going to be like, oh, well, TikTok Shop is better because it has more active users, right? Because my target demographic is on it more compared to Amazon, right? Because they have a better fulfillment system, like whatever it is. You're just like, okay, cool. So instead of you telling them, they tell you. That's the point, all right? Now, we move into doubt, okay? Doubt is basically causing why they can't do this on their own, right? The goal is to eliminate the DIY objection, do it yourself, right? And also to furthermore build the value of your product or service, because if they can't do it alone, that makes you more valuable, right? Cool. Easy question. Well, I gotta ask, like, why are you reaching out to us for help? Like, why not just try and do this on your own? Great question, right? And now they need to justify why they can't do it on their own. Okay? I'm gonna give you a side note here. And it depends on that prospect. This is why sales training is not just about, oh, watch one video. Like, this stuff should help, but there's a lot more nuance to it. If I have a business owner or I have a guy who you can tell has a large ego, type A personality, and it can be women sometimes too, it's just not as common, I'm going to appeal to their ego to get their ego to correct themselves. The ego always wants to be right. If I ask a type A person, like, well, why reach out for help? Like, why don't you try and do this on your own? There's a good chance they're like, well, I might. I could probably do this on my own. I'm not thinking about it. That's not the answer you want to get. So the way that I do this is like, I guess I'm kind of confused. I mean, let's say it's a business owner. You're a successful entrepreneur, you work hard, ran multiple businesses. Like, why are you reaching out to us for help? Like, why not just try and do this on your own? What I did there is I gave him a compliment, right? But remember, the ego wants to be right. It doesn't matter what it's right on, it just wants to be correct. Okay? So because of that, it's going to correct me, right? It's say, well, I don't know how to do TikTok Shop, right? That's the fucking key, okay? Now, further doubt questions. But where do you feel like you would need the most help with ABC, whatever your business is, with TikTok Shop, right? Let's say we're using that for the example. This further causes doubt, okay? Because they're gonna have to now think about, well, I would probably need help with product sourcing and, actually getting the photos up and customer support, whatever it might be, right? And so now what they're telling themselves is more reasons that they can't do it on their own. And additionally, you should be taking high quality notes because whatever they tell you, you need to put that in your pitch, right? If they say, oh, I need help on product sourcing, when you're in your pitch and the first pillar of your pitch is like literally product sourcing, you'd be like, how earlier you're talking to me about how like one of the biggest things you feel like you're gonna need help on is product sourcing? I'm like, yeah. Be like, well, that's exactly why the very first thing that we focus on is automated product sourcing. Because just like so many other customers that we've had, they feel like their biggest issue is finding the products, and it is when you're first starting out. How do you know where to go? Here's how we solve that for you, right? So you use their words, not against them, for them, okay? Cool. Now, after I've done all of that, this is where I like to move into cost of an action, okay? The cost of an action basically means, what's the cost if they don't make a change, right? Like, what's the opportunity cost they missed out on, right? So here's what I do, and this is why I put it in this part of the call, because I have enough ammunition from earlier in the call. So I'll say, if you had whatever they told me they need from above. So let's say they told me they needed help with finding the products, like a mentor who can work with them one-on-one, and how to use TikTok, right? They're not tech savvy. I'd be like, cool, I gotta ask, like, if you had someone who was there to guide you one-on-one and the done-for-you tech setup so that you didn't have to worry about doing all that, and you had someone who just did the product sourcing for you, if you had that, say, a year ago when you first started looking into TikTok Shop, like, where do you think you'd be by now? So I take their words and I attach it to what I'm doing, okay? This is huge because the cost of an action, this is what builds the gap. This is what creates urgency. This is that oh shit moment that gets them to realize, oh fuck, this is what I've missed out on, right? And I like to go deep here. Because if they're like, well, I think I would do well, I'd probably have a shop up and running or two. I want tangibles. I want them to be like, oh my God, I've missed out on so much, right? You could follow up that question with, have you calculated the opportunity cost? Usually they're like, no. Or sometimes they'll be like, I'm afraid to look at it, right? Like, how much is it? And then they'll tell you the number, right? And let's say he's like, 100 grand. You go deeper into it, $100,000. You told me that one of your biggest drivers was to get to $100,000 a year so that you could be able to walk away from your 9 to 5 so that you could spend more time with your toddlers. What would this have done to your goal of being able to actually walk away from your 9 to 5 and be home more? How much closer would you be? Be like, I'd probably already be there. You'd already be spending time with them? Be like, yeah. So then I guess how much longer do you want to wait? I don't want to wait any longer. Well, why not? You've already waited 3 years, so what's so different about right now? well, my kids are getting older, blah, blah, blah. Like, do you see how powerful that is? When you get the cost of an action correct, you can go deeper in that section. And this is where you create the true urgency. Okay, like it's the most important part of the discovery. Okay, but you do need to have everything else that we spoke about, because I use the anchor of the monetary goal and the emotional goal, right? I use what they told me they needed help on to build that cost of an action. Okay, it's critical that you get the proper information so that you can do this. All right. Now, trust-based question. Okay. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to gauge, like, how aware are they of us? Don't let this dissuade you from moving forward. However, it could be a great opportunity to get them to further sell themselves on you. Okay, because you can say, hey, like, what stood out about us compared to every other person you've seen out there, right? Easy way to say this, it's a little more nonchalant. I'm sure obviously, like, you see all these people on Facebook, wherever you guys market from. I guess I'm kind of curious, like, what was it specifically about us, or you can call out, the name of the guru, about, Jeff, that kind of stood out to you compared to, say, maybe some other people you've seen out there, right? Like super nonchalant, laid back, music softeners, maybe, etc. The goal of this question, when done correctly, is they will sell themselves on you or the guru, whoever it is, right? Or your business. You get the point, right? They'll be like, oh, well, he just seemed really genuine. Or like, I watched that video and like, it seemed like it was really clear and like step by step. And that's what I need. Like, that's what you're trying to do here. Okay. So earlier we got them to sell themselves on the method, right? TikTok job. Now we're trying to get them to sell them on us. Okay. To build that trust, right? And you might be wondering, well, what if they're like, oh, I don't know. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to see what's different. You can challenge them a little bit. Be like, oh, I totally understand that. But I guess, do you just like go clicking ads all day and like hopping on these calls? Or like, what was it specifically that stood out about us enough for you to feel comfortable to say, you know what, like, let me hop on a call with these guys, like see what this is about. Because like there's a lot of people out there you can be talking to right now. You know what I mean? And then you can usually get something out of that. Okay. Next, I like to move to partner spouse. Okay. So I'll just be like, is it just you doing this? Do you have a partner or spouse you're working with, etc.? Right? Weeds out partner spouse objection. Okay. We go into that further. If so, like let's say they have one, be like, cool. Yeah. Do they know you're on the call right now? Like, how do they feel about this? Are they supportive? Right? Now, this is critical. Okay. What you're really trying to do is you're trying to figure out, do I need to get that other person on the call? Can I pre-handle this objection, or is it not going to be an objection? Okay. If you get someone who's extraordinarily alpha, right? A very alpha male, or even a female who holds a very alpha personality, it should be clear if they're going to need their person's buy-in. What you don't want to do is be like, are they going to need to be on the call to make a decision? Like, you don't want to be salesy like that. You need to subtly put in, this is where you just need to be able to read people's energy. If you get a man who is not alpha, okay, who is kind of effeminate, who's more laid back, you're probably going to need his wife. Just the truth. Okay? If you get a woman who is more feminine, who is a little more timid, right? Probably going to need your husband, or defer to that, or that objection will come up. Okay? There's two ways you can go about this. If you figure out that you're talking to the type of person that's going to need someone else there, okay, and you know that's going to come up, just split it up into 2 calls, right? Now, ideally, it depends on your offer and your sales process, etc. If you have setters, they should be able to figure this out before the call, so you can have both decision makers present on the call, okay? But if you don't, just split it up. It's way fucking easier if you know that there's going to be someone else involved. Because again, listen, it's about an energy thing. If you're dealing with a man who's kind of effeminate, he's kind of more laid back, etc., he's just going to bring up his wife. You're not going to get him to step into a more masculine version of himself in an hour-long call. You're just not, right? You won't do it. But if you have his wife buy him, and then you're selling both of them, and you get the wife to buy in and give him the support that he needs, he'll take that step. Okay, so you have to be cognizant of that, right? Now, in addition, I like to go deeper, and I'm going to show you how to pre-handle a partner spouse objection. If you have someone who you're like, okay, cool, I think it's just them, right? Like, even if they have a partner spouse, but like, you're like, okay, this person has the energy that they seem like someone who's a bit more alpha who would just move forward, right? If you got to the $10,000 a month you've been talking about, you've been trying to get to for the past 3 years, and you're actually able to be home more for your wife and kids, like, what do you think that would mean to your wife? Oh man, it'd be great. Well, how would that benefit her? Oh man, she's been so busy, for the past few years. She would be able to kind of relax. Yeah. Okay. And how do you think she would look at you differently if after years of trying that you were finally able to do this? Like, oh my God, she'd be so proud of me. Right? So you could start to seed this in. And when you do that, it changes from something we're like, oh, I gotta go talk to my honey, to like now they're doing this for her. Now, I would probably go a bit deeper on that in a sales call and go a few layers deeper, but you get the point, right? Cool. All right. After we've done that, we go to the transition, okay? This is where we diagnose the issue and prescribe the solution. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do a transition, okay? And what a lot of entry level and even some higher level sales reps are doing, and they're missing out on a huge opportunity in the transition, they're just doing a basic transition, okay? Where basically what they do is they make what's called a high level promise, where it sounds like this. Well, Jeff, based on what you said, we can definitely get you to that XYZ goal. Now, I can walk you through that process if you like. Is that something you'd like to know more about? That's all I do. And look, that works good, but it could be a lot better, okay? What I like to do is called the prescriptive transition, okay? It's my preferred method because what it is the simultaneous explanation of why everything they've tried hasn't worked for them and why your solution is gonna be the thing that does work for them, okay? When you do this correctly, you should get a light bulb moment. There should be something that goes off in the head, they're like, oh my God, it all makes sense. It's basically the culmination and the summary of the discovery that you just had in an easy, digestible way where they're like, wow, I get it now. When you nail this transition correctly, what I'm about to show you, you could sell them anything after that. Like the product doesn't matter because now you fully understand their situation. Just like if you were in a doctor's office, they ask you a bunch of questions, a diagnosis, like maybe you go in there for your leg, and they tap it, etc. And they're like, well, the reason you're feeling X, Y, and Z is because you hurt your anterior dorsalitis thing. Like, oh my God, and every time you step like this, you feel like shooting pain up. You're like, oh my God, you totally understand. They could prescribe you steroids, they could prescribe you fucking a million different things. You're like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever it is, because they understand your problem. That is what you can do in a transition, is to truly show that you've understood someone's problem. And this is where so many people miss out, okay? So here's how I like to do it. High level promise, okay? Overview of what they've done, explain back to them using their own words, okay? Why what they've done hasn't worked, explain how they need the opposite of what they've tried, get permission to pitch, and then pro tip. If you can use a testimonial in here, right? Or you can compare them to the founder, the business owner, whatever it is, it's very powerful, right? If you could be like, a lot of ways you remind me of our founder, Sally. But, oh my God. Or you'd be like, in a lot of ways, you remind me of one of our clients, Jeff, who's in a really similar spot. It's a very subtle way of doing this, but it fucking slams. Okay, so let me show you a full example. Well, Jeff, based on what you said, I'm confident that we can get you to $10,000 a month. Now, I've been taking some notes here. Can I just give you some open, honest thoughts? Look, if I'm being frank, what I see as the real issue, it's the vehicle theory. Like what? Be like, well, look, you told me that you've tried Amazon FBA and affiliate marketing to get to 10K a month, but you weren't able to hit it. And look, it's not that they don't work. It's just, I don't think you found the right vehicle for you for right now, or else you'd already be at 10K a month. Okay, so a few subtle things I want to show you what I did. Number one, what I said. Okay, let me give you a full example of how to do this, all right? Well, Jeff, basically you said, I'm confident that we can get you to $10,000 a month. Now, I've been taking some notes here. Is it cool if I just give you some open, honest thoughts? Be like, yeah, sure. Like, cool. Well, look, if I'm being frank, what I see as the real issue, it's the vehicle that you're in. They're like, what the fuck? Be like, you ever heard that quote from Warren Buffett? It doesn't matter how hard you row, but rather what boat you get in. Be like, yeah, I get it. It's like, well, it's kind of that, right? Think about it. So pause. What I just did right there is I'm using a quote from a fucking billionaire, and that's another form of proof / a testimonial, is that you basically use someone who's a lot smarter that we can all relate is very successful. So basically whatever that person says, if I'm mirroring that, one that raises my perceived status, but also whatever I'm about to say, they just think it's more important and they hold it to be more true because someone very successful said it. Okay, that's what I'm doing, right? I go into the rest and be like, look, for being frank, what I see as a real issue, it's vehicle here, right? Because look, you told me that you tried Amazon FBA and affiliate marketing to get to 10K a month, but you just weren't able to hit that. And look, it's not that they don't work. It's just, I don't think you found the right vehicle for you for right now, or else you'd already be at 10K a month. Pause, what I do there. I brought back in with what they tried. Say, hey, look, you told me you tried X, Y, and Z, but you weren't able to hit it. And it's not that they don't work. This is so important. When you talk about what things other people have tried, if you were like, oh yeah, like they don't work today's market, like they suck, whatever, you just come off as salesy. They don't trust you because they know it's a sales tactic. So you just have to agree with them instead. Just be like, look, it's not that they don't work. I just don't think you found the right thing for you for right now. That's powerful. The right thing for right now. I'm not saying that those are wrong. I'm just saying that, like, based on the current situation, it's not the right vehicle at the moment. Okay, that makes a big fucking difference. All right, because see, with Amazon FBA, like you said, remember, like you said, he told me this. you had to spend dozens of hours a week doing product research. But how can you expect to be able to do that and have the time to like actually properly do the research when you're working 12 hours a day like you've been? And they're gonna be like, yeah, I'd be like, yeah, exactly, right? And with drop shipping, it's kind of similar thing, right? It's not that it doesn't work. It's just that, like you said, to actually hit 10K a month, I mean, you would need to be selling over 1,000 units a month, which would require you to have a ton of overhead, staff, and then managing all those customers, right? Which is something that you said that you didn't really want to have the headache of, right? And you're like, yeah, right. But exactly. It's just not the right thing for right now. See, okay, cool. So what I just did right there is I just took everything that they said and all the reasons the stuff didn't work that we figured out earlier in the solution, right, of why it didn't work, and I'm using it in the transition, okay? All right. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna flip it. I'm just gonna say, what you need is the opposite. It's like, duh, but it hits like a light bulb, right? It'd be like, see, what you need is to be in a vehicle where, number one, you could start this alongside your 9 to 5, where it's only gonna take you 30, 60 minutes a day. And this way, you can do it on your lunch break instead of not having the time to actually do the thing because you're so busy working 12 hours a day, right? And they'd be like, yeah, that makes sense, right? And number two, something where you can actually sell higher ticket items where instead of having to make 1,000 sales a month and deal with all the overhead, the customers, the employees, everything that comes with that to make $10,000 a month, you could just sell 2 larger price items, which means you'd have less overhead, less moving pieces, and then ultimately less stress. And then number 3, it needs to be something that when it's fully up and running, you're not creating another job for yourself, but instead you can work a few hours a week on it so you can have the freedom and the flexibility to spend it with your toddlers and your wife, right? And they're like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. That's what I need, right? Now, did you really give like nitty gritty details? No, you just took everything that hasn't worked and just gave the opposite. Simple, right? The next part is get the permission to pitch. So I can walk you through that exact process on, how TikTok Shop would help you get there if you want. But I mean, you tell me where you want to go from here. And what I do on Zoom calls is I'll literally I'll sit back and be like, you tell me where you want to go from here. Okay. Now, step number 4 is the pitch. Okay. So let me show you how to do the pitch. All right. Cool. So here's the general framework. So you get the high level promise. Okay. So basically how you're going to help them out. You have the 3 pillars of your offer. Okay. And then it's broken up into the feature, right? So that's like the more tangible thing, like we set up TikTok Shop for you, right? And then the benefit of the feature, right? So the benefit of us setting it up for them is the fact that they save time, right? And then the benefit of that benefit, which means if they save time, they're going to have that time to spend with their family to be the type of father they want to be and not have to struggle between do I start the business or to spend time with my kids, right? So it's a more emotional benefit. We're also going to use the us versus them frame a lot. Okay, the us versus them frame is basically saying, well, here's what everyone else does, here's what we do, right? Because that raises your perceived status. Okay, we're then going to ask them if they have any questions in the process. We will temp check them. Okay, I like to do 110. We price drop. All right, now let's continue this example with TikTok Shop. Okay, I've never done a TikTok Shop offer, so this is just what I've seen from scrolling on TikTok. All right, so here's a high level promise. I'll be like, all right, so what this is going to be is a 3-step process that's going to take you from having just learned about TikTok Shop to actually be up and running and consistently doing 10K months in the next 6 months. Okay, now on your paper, I want you to write down 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I tell them to do that. It's frame control, right? I'm commanding them to do something, right? I'm telling them what to do. Okay, subtle things like that you want to do throughout your conversation. Okay, not like in a weird, overbearing way, but just subtly when you can do it. All right. Now, for the first one, this is how I know. I'll be like, cool. So next to number 1, I want you to write down automated product sourcing. Okay, here's the feature. This is the process where we're going to automate 90% of finding winning products for you. Okay, here's the benefit of that feature. Because when you automate finding winning products, it resolves one of your biggest issues, which is knowing what to sell, right? Here's the benefit of that benefit, plus the us versus them frame. So what most people do when it comes to finding a winning product is they have to manually go through all product listings one by one to try and find the winners, which I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it takes dozens and dozens of hours a week. And like you told me earlier, you don't have that time right now because you're still working at the factory. So instead, we leverage our automated product finder that streamlines the process, allowing you to just plug in and get new winning products delivered to you in 20 minutes or less. Which means instead of spending dozens of hours away from your family trying to scour the internet for winning products, you can just have them delivered to you on your lunch break, which means you'll still be able to build a better future for your family without sacrificing time away from them like you did before. Pause. All right, let's talk about that. Okay. So again, the feature. This is the process where we automate 90% of winning products for you. The benefit of that, they know what to sell, right? The benefit of the benefit. And you saw the us versus them frame. I said, so what most people do, that was the us versus them. I didn't literally say us versus them, but I'm like, what most people do versus what we do, right? That raises our status. And then you can see how I cap it off, basically saying this way you can do it on your lunch break, right? And have more time for your family, which is the thing that they ultimately care about, right? This is why it's so important to take high quality notes and to have a really good discovery, because that's what they told me earlier on. I want to do this so I can get my time back to spend with my kids because I want to be a better father, whatever it is, right? It could be a bunch of things. But if you tie that into your pitch, every point is geared towards that ultimate goal, that anchor that they told you, both the logical and the emotional. That's when it hits. That's when it's tailored for them. They're like, oh my God, this is what I need because it's specific now, okay? Now, as a pause, in between the pillars, I get buy-in, okay? So with something like this, I'd be like, cool. So let me ask you this. If we were to come and essentially take really 80% of the work off your plate and install our winning product automation so that instead of having to find products on your own, you could just get them delivered to you and work on them while you're on your lunch break. I guess with you just starting out, like how do you feel like that would help you out right now? So I'm gonna ask them a question that's gonna get them to basically explain why they like it, right? To get them to sell themselves. Now you could ask a simple thing of like, cool, does that make sense? Any questions there? I don't like to do it that open-ended because sometimes they will hit you with technical questions. You don't want to get technical. Do not get technical in the sales calls, especially in the pitch. If you start to go technical, they will just berate you with questions and just and go in and you'll lose the sale. Okay? So that's why I'm basically asking them a leading question of like, well, how would that help you out? What I'm also doing is I'm getting them to envision their future using the product, right? If he has to answer that question of how, as he's beginning, this would help him out, he's going to be envisioning him using this product or service in the future, right? Which makes it more tangible, okay? Now, pillar number 2, all right? I'm gonna go through these a little bit quicker. All right, next number 2, I'm gonna write down TikTok Shop Blueprint, okay? This is gonna be the step-by-step blueprint that we walk you through to get your business up and running, okay? Because a lot of new TikTok Shop owners, they may get a few sales in the beginning, but then they struggle to create a sustainable and predictable business where they're actually getting sales month over month, and we don't want that happening to you. Okay? The way that we're gonna prevent this is by showing you the step-by-step blueprint that will show you how to identify market trends and capitalize on them to make sure that you're getting sales year-round. Because if our goal is to actually get you out of your 9 to 5, well, you're gonna need a predictable side income where every month you've got consistent sales happening, not a business where some months you make money and others you don't. Lot to talk about in this pillar. Let's look, okay? So first, this is gonna be a step-by-step blueprint where we walk through to get your business up and running, okay? The benefit of the feature, right? Because a lot of new TikTok Shop owners may get a few sales in the beginning, but then they struggle to create a sustainable, predictable business where they're getting sales month after month. We don't want that happening to you. Again, that's the us versus them frame. I say a lot of TikTok Shop owners have this, ours don't, right? Because we do it like this, right? Additionally, what I'm doing is I'm also basically creating future problems they may have, okay? The power of this is when you create a future problem, you then can solve it for them. And if you can solve it for them, that raises the value. Because they're like, oh, well, I didn't even think I was gonna have that problem, right? We're creating future problems for them. They're probably even thinking, I'm thinking about this. At the beginning stages, he's probably thinking about like, oh, like how do I even like find a product, right? Like that's what they're thinking about. But now we're talking about cash flow issues, right? Of like, how can they make sure that they're not gonna be, left out with no cash, right? So I created a future problem that I then solved for them, okay? Now, the benefit of the benefit. The way that we're gonna prevent that is by showing you the step-by-step blueprint that will show you how to identify market trends and capitalize on them to make sure that you're getting sales year-round. Because if our goal is to get you out of your 9 to 5, you need a predictable side income. And then I use the word consistent, right? So a few things. Number 1, I tie this back to the big goal, right? But number 2, and this is where you have to understand what's called the psychographics of your customers. Basically, you have to understand what it's like demographics, but for psychology, right? What makes these people tick? What are the common traits among your type of customers, right? Well, if you're selling a biz op thing, what people want is safe and predictable, consistent, reliable, right? Because to them, they're generally in a state of fear of making changes, which is why it's hard for them and they stay stuck, right? So you need to instill the opposite. So in your pitch, use words like that, right? Predictable, safe, consistent, reliable, right? Not things like, new, untested. Like that would be the opposite of what they want, right? They don't relate to that. There's a small percentage of the population wants those types of things, and the people that do are usually entrepreneurs, people who are high risk takers. That's not most biz op people. So again, you just have to know who you're talking to, right? Like if you're selling a dating offer and you've got a 70-year-old man on the phone, like you're not going to talk to him about getting, fiery, spicy Latina girls who are going to fucking berate him at dinner. You would probably talk about finding a nice, calm woman, like the type of woman he'd meet at a grocery store, something like that, right? Like you got to relate to your prospects for what they're looking for, okay? All right, and then pillar number 3, it would just be a further variation, right? That's how we do it. That is the process. Once we've done that, and just as a side note, if you're wondering about the amount of pillars, I like to do 3, okay? It just makes sense. It's a good number. You could do 4. I would never do more than 4 though, okay? You could do 2. Obviously never do less than 2. 3 is really the sweet spot, all right? Now let's talk about a temp check, okay? A temp check is basically trying to get their buy-in before you talk about the money. Because here's the thing. If they don't like what you just pitched and they get a low reading on this temp check, it doesn't matter how much your product or service is, they're not going to move forward, okay? So here's how I like to do it. Cool, Jeff, so tell me, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like 1 being this sucks, you hate it, like you want to like come over through the Zoom and like strangle me. 10 being this is exactly what you need to finally get out of your 9 to 5, build a TikTok shop and hit 10K a month so you can be more present for your friends and family. Like where specifically would you put yourself on that scale of like 1 to 10, just based on what we've talked about, right? Now, here's how to do this. If it's below an 8 or they sound uncertain, because it's not just about the number, it's also about the certainty in their voice. That's the most important thing. You need to probe in, you need to find the issue, solve it, and then retemp check, okay? So if they're, let's say they're like, yeah, like an 8, like that's not good. That sounds extremely uncertain. So I'd be like, nice, okay, well, what does an 8 mean to you exactly, right? I'd be like, well, it's good, but blah, blah, whatever. I'd be like, okay, well, like, what would you need to be a 10, right? Now I created a gap, and then usually they'll tell me. And then I handle the concerns, and then I re-temp check before price dropping. Do not price drop until you're confident they're a 9 or a 10 out of 10, and it's a confident 9 or 10 out of 10. You should hear something like, this is awesome, man. I'd say like a 9, 9.5, right? Like the energy should be different, okay? And even when they say they're an 8 or above, right? So like a 9, 9.5, 10, whatever it is, I'd be like, awesome. Well, what makes you a 10, right? I want them to reaffirm what they like because it just gets them to re-cement what they're wanting to do, right? Why they like our product or service, okay? Then we go into the price drop. Be like, cool. So for us to help you start your own automated TikTok shop and start making 5, 10, eventually 15K a month, really however much you want, it's just a one-time investment of $7,800. And then you just shut up, okay? Do not say anything after you price drop, okay? Now, let me explain how we do this. So, I always want to anchor it to how much they can make, right? I use the monthly increment when we're talking about like B2C people. If it was more B2B and you're talking about adding like an amount of top line revenue of like, yeah, we're gonna add $1 million top line revenue, you can do that, it's fine, right? Whatever that number is. But there's an anchor because if I say, okay, cool, it's just $7,800, and what they're anchored to is like, I'm going to be able to make $5, $10, $15,000 a month. Or again, like in a B2B example, let's say it was a $10,000 product, they're going to make $1 million, be like, cool. So to help you fix your lead gen and add $1 million in top line this year, just a one-time investment, $10,000. Right there, wow, 10,000 to get $1 million, makes sense, right? Beyond that, just a few different words you don't want to use. Like you don't want to use price or anything like that, or you're saying one-time investment. I'm not using cost because that is a negative association. Investment, that is a positive association, okay? And this is important. You just shut up. A lot of newer salespeople, they fuck this up because they get anxious and nervous. You will feel the tension. When you get good, you won't feel the tension. It's fun to do it. But when you're first starting out, or if you haven't like gotten over that hump yet, you will feel a tension when you price drop. Just sit in it. I promise you, they feel more tension than you do. Even if it gets a little awkward. And what I like to do, if like it does get awkward, like you don't want to sit there for 5 minutes doing a staring contest, just nod your head, just smile, just wait. They'll say something, okay? If you did your part, they will usually ask you some sort of buying signal questions. How can we get started? What are the next steps, etc., right? Maybe objections that come up. If you handle objections, handle them. This is the process. This is the 4 steps. Now, obviously, again, it's possible there could be objections. That's for another video. But if you've done everything right and you've gone to the level that you need to, the chance of you getting an objection is way lower. And if it does occur and you did this to a T as how I just described, where you really create that urgency, you really got the cost of inaction, the types of objections you're gonna get are usually be something much easier to handle, like price, partner, spouse, timing, something like that, right? Not the uncertainty style objections, which you really don't wanna get, which is a sign that you had a weak discovery. So hope this helps. See you in the next one.